The hearing will come to order. This is a U.S. Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources Subcommittee on Energy hearing. I appreciate our witnesses being here today. This is a legislative hearing by the subcommittee to consider 6 bills that are on the committee's legislative calendar. And these bills cover a range of energy-related topics under the purview of the Department of Energy that include S. 3460, the 10 Million Solar Roofs Act, introduced by Senator Sanders. The bill would require the Secretary of Energy to provide the funds to states for rebates, loans, and other incentives to eligible individuals and entities for the purchase of installation of solar energy systems. S. 3396, the Supply Star Act, introduced by Senators Bingaman and Lincoln. The bill would establish a program within the Department of Energy to identify and promote practices, companies, and products that use energy efficiently, high energy efficiently supply chains to conserve energy, water, and other resources. And Senate Bill 3251, introduced by Senator Carper, who was with us today. This bill would improve energy efficiency and the use of renewable energy by federal agencies. And S. 679, introduced by Senator Collins, who's also with us today. This bill would establish a research and development, demonstration, and commercial application program to promote research of appropriate technologies for heavy-duty plug-in hybrid vehicles. And S. 2900, the Gas Turbine Efficiency Act, introduced by Senator Gillibrand. This bill would establish a research and development technology demonstration program to improve the energy efficiency of gas turbines. And finally, S. 3233, the Surplus Uranium Disposition Act, introduced by Senator Barrasso. The bill would amend the Atomic Energy Act of 1954 to authorize the Secretary of Energy to barter, transfer, or sell surplus uranium from the inventory of the Department of Energy. The purpose of this hearing is obviously to collect testimony from the Department of Energy and others, but we are fortunate to have 2 of our colleagues here, Senator Collins and Senator Carper, and they are here today to talk about the bills they've introduced and are sponsoring, and so we welcome them to the committee. I will turn to my colleague, the ranking member, Senator Risch, when he shows up for an opening statement, but now I'd like to turn to 2 of our colleagues and start with you, Senator Collins. Thank you for being here and to give testimony on your bill. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, and again, thank you, Mr. Chalk, for being here. I wanted to start with S. 3460. Mr. Chalk, the 10 Million Solar Roofs Act proposes to distribute funds to states to incent solar energy systems using the State Energy Program allocation formula. I know that the DOE Inspector General released a report finding that the SEP program and ARV funds were meant to go towards additional solar in Florida and were used instead. So is it your view that this report raises questions about whether that's the most appropriate mechanism for this?
Sure. Let me explain first of all what happened in Florida. Florida had approved state energy programs in place for the solar rebate program back to 2008 and 2007. It was so successful that it was oversubscribed, and the state didn't have enough money to pay the rest of the rebates. So when they offered this up as an activity in their Recovery Act funding, they first chose to complete the rebates to the people that have already subscribed. And the department did approve that, and measures been put in place so that doesn't happen again, so we don't use Recovery Act dollars for something that's been done in the past and essentially doesn't create jobs. Hopefully when those people got their rebate that they put that money back into the economy and created jobs somewhere along the way. But it was a very successful program, oversubscribed. I think the SEP is one route. There's some issues possibly with the formula where it's partly based on previous funding. We may want to look at that. There's other opportunities to use the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant formula, which is much more based on population, overall population and daytime population, to use that. Because I think the intent of the overall legislation is to scale this as much as possible, get it out into many communities as possible. So I would prefer probably the EECBG mechanism. I would definitely prefer SEP or EECBG over competitive solicitation. I think the competitive solicitation is good, but I think it provides unfair advantage to the states that are already ahead in solar energy. And I think, again, the intent of the legislation is to scale this as much as possible and to have deployment nationwide, not just in some of the leading states.
One of the barriers, obviously, to the deployment of great distributed generation is our process of interconnecting to the utility grid. And would you consider something where states would be required to streamline their interconnection procedures for small distributed solar before they could access the funds?
Yes. In fact, I think we ought to have standards, because there's ways of doing solar right in terms of working with utilities, for instance, net metering. You mentioned interconnection standards, but net metering is something else that we would say should be a condition of the funding. Any other best practices that come into play, and obviously we want folks to leverage this money as much as possible.
Okay, and changing to 3396 on the Supply Star program. I'm aware that the Department of Energy made some good progress in tracking some of the supply chain efficiency issues. Can you give us an idea how that we might grow this for the future, how this bill might complement those efforts that DOE has already been undertaking?
Right now we have Save Energy Now program where we have folks volunteer to sign up for 2.5% improvement or reduction, if you will, in energy intensity per year. So over 10 years, that could be as much as 25% and really help industry on their bottom line. We help them do energy audits. We help them baseline their energy use. As Senator Carper said, if you can't measure it, then you really don't know how much you're using. So we spend a lot of time coming up, working with the American Standards Associations and, in fact, international standards associations. So we know we're measuring the energy for various processes in the right fashion. So I think we would use our existing programs to complement this effort, which I think is more expansive. Again, it's more cradle to grave, if you will, looking at the whole process, beginning with extraction all the way to recycling, where our current efforts are mainly dependent or looking at process efficiencies in the plant itself, not looking at where the materials are coming from or the packaging thereafter or how consumers use the product. So this legislation we support because it's more expansive of our current programs, but we can use a lot of the tools developed in our current program to help industry decrease their energy use.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Barrasso. Can I go back to 3251, which is Senator Carper's bill? And I understand that power purchase agreements are used. The Department of Defense is allowed to enter into long-term contracts up to 30 years, while other agencies are just 10. And so, Mr. Chalk, do you know how many power purchase agreements are in place within the federal government, and does the administration support extending the length of time beyond 10 years?
Yes, I mean, right now for renewable energy, there's about 8 purchase power agreements in place. 4 of those, actually, of those 8 are out of the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. Well, another one is, a few others are in the Defense Department, like the Nellis Air Force Base. And we do support the bill. And again, I want to make sure the subcommittee understands this is a good tool. Again, the first cost is really what we're trying to overcome with renewable energy. Since the fuel is free, it becomes very predictable to say with relatively low risk what the cost of electricity is going to be over 20 or 30-year period. Now, having said that, on mature technologies, wind turbines, for instance, I think we feel very comfortable. On other technologies where we're still coming down the cost curve, we wouldn't want the federal government to enter into a long-term agreement and then have the solar R&D be successful and pay higher, over time, pay higher electricity rates than what the market might bear. So that would be one concern I think we'd like to address with the subcommittee, as well as between DOE and the subcommittee and the Office of Management and Budget. The other issue with the PPAs, of course, is how they're scored by the Congressional Budget Office. Even though it may be over a 20 or 30-year period, it's all scored in year one. And of course, that can be a lot in the billions of dollars. So that's another issue that we like to work with the subcommittee on, is how the PPAs are actually scored. We do think it's a better tool than current energy-saving performance contracts, which you can enter in for renewable energy. We believe that there's much lower finance costs associated with it. So essentially, it's a much lower risk instrument than some of the tools that are available to us now for renewable energy.
I wonder what BPA says about those about purchasing contracts. I mean, being an entity, that'd be curious to see. So you're basically saying there are some issues here with the length of time. You generally like to increase it beyond 10 years, but there are issues here. Is that a
beyond
fair
10 years?
Characterization?
But I think there are a few issues that we'd like to work with the subcommittee on, so that the deals we enter into, we establish pretty hard, rigorous criteria so that we are purchasing electricity at the market rate or lower through these long-term instruments.
Okay. If I could go to the heavy-duty vehicle research legislation. Now, I know we have a couple of different programs, or Senator Stabenow has introduced 2843, which would provide a new structure for medium and heavy-duty trucks. And the department, as I mentioned before, I know conducts research with regards to heavy-duty truck fuel and efficiency. So can you give us a sense of how these, the current authority and this bill and other proposals would fit together?
Sure. If we start with Senator Collins' bill, which is more narrowly focused than Senator Stabenow's, but Senator Collins' bill is focused on an area of our portfolio that's a little underwhelming. We don't have a lot of investment in class 4 through 7 trucks. In fact, the R&D investment is only about $1 million a year. Of course, a lot of the investments we make on hybrid technology, whether they be on light duty or for the class 8 trucks, is still going to apply in these middle classes, if you will. But we support that bill. We support the program that's in that bill. I think maybe one adjustment that could be made is the first phase, the R&D phase, maybe be 2 years instead of 1 year, and we think that will allow more designs to be looked at. And the ultimate deliverable of that first phase is a heavy-duty hybrid truck that I think it'll allow for a little better shakeout of the design and operations and the integration of all the hybrid components. You could almost flip-flop the time frame for 1 and 2, or just make phase 1 2 years. So we support that very much. In fact, this class of trucks is probably going to benefit from hybridization more than any other class of trucks, especially the heavy, because of the drive cycle, a lot of start and stopping through the urban drive cycles. You can picture delivery vans or box-type trucks, things like that. It's also a little easier on the infrastructure. These trucks basically go back to the same place every night, and they can refuel through electric charging stations and things like that. So we support this bill very much. It could improve fuel economy by a factor of 2. We also support the broader bill, Senator Stabenow, because that would authorize essentially our whole vehicles program. So actually, the first bill is almost a subset of the broader bill, and we support both of those bills very much.
And do you think that there's enough potential applications for the minimum number of grants here?
We think there's enough companies that would be interested to meet the minimum requirements, and there's enough different type of applications. There's buses, there's delivery vans, there's box trucks, refuge trucks. So we'd have enough platforms that we could really, I think, come up with some optimal designs for each situation under this program.
Okay, and I know we didn't hear a statement from Senator Gillibrand, but if we could talk about S2900, does the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy conduct research on these turbines, or is it primarily within the Office of Fossil Energy?
There's over the last 10, 20 years, both offices have conducted R&D. In energy efficiency, renewable energy, our gas turbine investments have decreased. It's on the order of $5 million today, but mostly in support of combined heat and power applications. And we made actually a lot of awards on the Recovery Act for combined heat and power with gas turbines. The Office of Fossil Energy is mainly focused on utility scale, hundreds of megawatt type of turbines. So that's been their role. They've been doing the larger turbines. We've been doing the smaller turbines. And we do support this bill. We think that gas turbines are a very mature technology. So what's in the bill is almost a step increase in efficiency. So while there's lots of investment in gas turbine R&D by industry, we think there is a government role here to improve the efficiency from about 50% combined cycle to 65%. So we'd like to work with the subcommittee on this balance of what is funded by the government, the higher risk enabling R&D, versus what industry can do by itself, because this is a mature technology. You know, roughly, I think 7 gigawatts of gas turbines went in last year. If you look at capacity, gas turbine capacity is even greater than coal. It's not for generation, but there's lots of capacity. Gas turbines are very, very cost effective by themselves. If you look at a single combustion regime, you're talking on the order of $700 per kilowatt. The combined cycle is only $1,000 per kilowatt. So these are the most cost effective power generation units that essentially you can buy, and they're very, very modular. So I think why we support the bill, the intent of the bill, we want to carefully look at what the government investment should be, which is the higher risk R&D.
And what about, this uses, I believe, the Energy Policy Act of 2005, that 999E section. So it limits the participation to U.S. companies. Does that cause any potential?
It doesn't provide any, I think we would concur with that. I think we could also work with the committee offline on, if it's not a U.S.-owned company, as long as they have operations and research in the United States, we would concur with that, because taxpayer dollars would stay within the United States. But I can get back to the committee on a formal position on that issue.
Well, I think most of my colleagues want to see the investment here, so it's a question of just understanding how that 2005 Act section would apply. On the uranium legislation that my colleague Senator Barrasso has recommended, does the department perform an economic analysis, before selling and bartering, transforming, uranium from stockpiles? Do they do that now?
Yes, ma'am, we do. We actually contract with a industry organization that conducts these analyses on behalf of the department, and then those analyses are then reviewed by the department, concurred in, and used as the basis for making the decision.
So is that information, is that analysis made public?
Yes, it is.
And so does the department have existing authority to sell and barter and transfer? Do you have that now?
Yes, ma'am, the department does.
Okay. But this appears to fix it in statute. Is that?
Madam Chairman, I'm an engineer, not a lawyer, but I have it from our counsel who says that.
Well, we need more engineers at DOE, not more lawyers. So that's
that the department has the authority, and that one of the department's concerns on this legislation is the implication that by the language in the bill, that we don't have that authority, and that authority already exists in existing legislation.
So you can't think, you don't see anything here that provides more flexibility?
No, ma'am.
Okay. But why, if you have that authority, would you be worried about specifying it?
Again.
You're not the lawyer. Okay. All right. Well, maybe.
But
maybe we'll get an answer from somebody over there, on that point. Okay, well, I think that is all the questions that I have, and I know I'm sure we'll keep the record open on these various pieces of legislation or people who want to ask questions to the department. We appreciate you being here and being so forthcoming on the details of where the agency supports these various bills and how they coordinate with various projects already underway by DOE. I think that's very important. There's so much work for us to continue to do, so we're glad to have our colleagues working with DOE on these programs and looking at getting these bills passed. So the hearing is adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.